Tired of the hype about living the dream? It's time for truth. This is the place for tools, power, and real talk so you can create the life you dream and deserve. Your ultimate life. Subscribe, share, create. You have infinite power.
Hello and welcome to today's show, today's episode of Your Ultimate Life, the podcast I created to help you both realize and create a life of purpose, prosperity, and joy by serving with your gifts and talents and life experience. Today, I have a special guest, as you can see, Christy. Tia, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
You are welcome. I'm delighted to have you here. We've known each other for a while, and we just haven't had the chance to do this yet. So I'm going to start with perhaps an unexpected question. I want you to, without being modest in any way, tell our listeners, how does Tia add good to the world?
Tia adds good to the world. I love helping people. I know it sounds cliche to some people, but finding your own special superpowers and how to do that can be very challenging for people. So I'm really good at tips. You know this, Kellan. I'm really good at tips, and I tell people how to make their everyday life a little less stressful. So that's how I really have made a positive impact in this world. And it's so simple. It's something that comes so easy to me, but it was really incredible to find out that I was helping people all over the world by giving just these simple little tips.
I love that. And what made you, did you start from a really stressful place that made you start looking for ways to de-stress yourself?
I have been giving a version of Tips from Tia since I was a teenager. I mean, I started out, I think I was 16 years old, writing for one of the local magazines, writing about prom and pimples. Seriously.
Oh, wow.
There's always been some kind of version of Tips from Tia. And it took me many, many years to figure out that it wasn't just useless information. It was actually something that was causing a really cool impact in the world. First locally, first in the community. And then it branched out to worldwide.
So we'll talk more about that. Why do you think, and I believe you and I'm glad you're doing it, why do you think we live in such a stress-filled world that makes it necessary? I mean, I love what you do, and what you do is wonderful. How did we get here?
Lots of expectation on ourselves from society. We stress about everything. I did my TEDx talk on that, and you're familiar with that. And it is a worldwide epidemic. It is something that people stress over everything. And, I take it back to the fact that, it's chemical. We have our adrenaline drop, and our amygdala, when it releases that chemical, it doesn't dose us. It's one drop, and that's what we get. So, this was put in us so we could take on a lion or, find our dinner and, hunt it down. But now we get to use it in traffic or standing in a long line. And it really causes that overwhelming stress. There's so much energy, we don't know how to release it. And, we got to find positive ways to release it instead of just being angry at everybody else in the world. We're all going through it.
It is. And it's, at least several things I've read said that, okay, we have this thing for protection and food and all that stuff. And that was supposed to be on and off. So you have a thing and you go do it and then it goes away. And it seems like today we live in a world where it's a minimum, a constant low level, where we sort of live on a base level of stress instead of ever turning it off. What does that do to me, or a person who lives at that 20% or 30% on in terms of that stress chemicals that you were talking about?
I love it. Did you see me adjust? This is where I get to really nerd out. I get really
good. I want you to.
Yeah.
Tell me what that does to me to get all that in there sort of on a constant basis.
Well, what happens, I think, is we're running on a different frequency nowadays. I read, I'm a self-proclaimed nerd. I read a lot of research and different things, and that's what helps me do what I do. But we're running on a different frequency than normal. The Earth was always at like 132, or I'm sorry, 432, and now since like 5G was unleashed, we're at a different frequency. It's not a great frequency for us. It's a very stressful frequency. So we're constantly almost like in a bad mood, with this vibration that's coming through us, right? So we have to kind of combat that with other ways of doing it. And that's spending time in nature, that's spending time, listening to frequencies that are at 432. A lot of oldie songs are done at 432. So, it's trying to give that brain what it needs and give that body the energy that it needs. But what it's doing to you when you stay in the stressful, anxious, high energy of frustration, it's causing illnesses. I mean, this is like the number one cause of major illnesses across the world. And like number one being heart. It's affecting your heart. Everybody's got a bad heart nowadays, and we can blame, the vaccines and, different things like that. Sure. But we're not doing ourselves a favor by being this stressed out all the time, right? But we're talking about, we have issues with weight gain, weight loss, thyroid issues, depression, anxieties, we get into the mental stuff of it. So we want to make sure that we are really doing things to combat that and really taking care of ourselves, because we can take all the vitamins, that are on the market, but if we're not taking care of the internal, we're not going to make it.
So I love this because you said something that I want to make sure that listeners are hearing, and that is the natural stuff around us used to be X. And you mentioned 432, and if you listeners do a little woo-woo stuff, you'll find that that's a frequency, tuning that you can use. A440 is what pianos and orchestras are tuned to it. But 432 is a slightly lower frequency that is a more natural one. And what you've said is we, as a society, have created an environment where we live in a different frequency, and the outcome of that is this underlying stress. So we've manufactured a thing, and I guess what it makes me think of is air quality. When I was growing up in California, there were years where, that smog in LA used to be something they talked about all the time. It was really bad, and the sky was brown, and that was a manufactured thing. And then we did, emissions in cars and all that stuff. And now it's not like that. And so we did a thing and created a mess. We said, oh, crap, it's a mess. And then we did some things to uncreate it. And we didn't all have to stay home, and we didn't all have to quit doing stuff. And this reminds me of that. We've created this frantic, always on, cell phone in your face, tablet in one hand and whatever in the other. And that has elevated this frequency, in other words, the status in which we live, to a place that's not healthy. And what you're teaching us is that there are things that you can do to fix it, just like we are fixing or working on air quality. Did I say that right?
Yes, correct. I mean, that is like the perfect analogy of it. Yeah, we've created this environment, and is now radiating on a different frequency. And if we go back into nature, if we go and we find the resources, and like you said, there are different frequencies. You want to get like woo-woo and get like really into it. Obviously, vibrating on a higher frequency can be very, very important for excelling and abundance and, different things like that. They call it the angel music, and they call it that reason, that for a specific reason they call it that. And it's beautiful, but naturally the earth was vibrating at the 432. So that's what we were all born into. That's what we knew. And, they say even babies being born now are being born into 432, but instantly coming into this other frequency, since 5G, and, it's a very stifling frequency. So we want to try to make sure that we are doing everything we can to balance that back.
So now we've identified the problem. And so for a minute, I've got a whole nother tack I want to go on in a minute or in a few minutes. But right now I want you to teach us some things. So you said you've been giving tips for people for their lives, for different things, all the way back to prom and pimples, and which, of course, for a 16-year-old would be a big deal. But now you're doing different things and have been for many years. And this one is about stress. So, and you've mentioned some sort of casually as you've gone through, but why don't you give us maybe 4 or 5 that are easy, they're available to people, and they don't have to go some weird place, some mountaintop or Sedona or someplace that they can sort of do at home. And the reason I'm asking for this is I want people to test this out, do this and try it and see what happens. So give us some stuff that we can do this afternoon.
This afternoon. I love that. Well, if I could at least mention my TEDx. So my TEDx was really cool. It went viral. And, we all hear about the stress, how to reduce stress, eat right, sleep right, meditate and exercise, right? And it's all nicely packaged. But the fact is we are different kinds of stressors. And I say there's 2 forms. So you got the silent stressor and you got the frazzler. And the difference between the 2 is the silent stressor keeps everything in. And the frazzler is kind of like everything's out
all over.
And
right?
they make everybody else stress along with them. So you kind of got to know what kind of stressor you are to really help combat that. Doesn't that make a lot of sense when you think about it?
Sure.
So like with frazzlers, they don't know how to meditate. They're just going all the time and they're like, so they really have to learn how to work on their meditation skills, where like a silent stressor, they just meditate on their problems like all the time. So they're overthinkers a lot of times. So, both are. We're not gonna say that they're not, but it's very interesting. So for a silent stressor, something that would be really good is to go out and exercise. So go for a run or, something that can really uncork that energy that's going on inside. Silent stressors, they need to learn how to express how they're feeling. A lot of times silent stressors will just go on the, whatever, whatever you want to do, it's fine. They don't want to ruffle any kind of feathers or anything like that. They want to make sure that it's everything's kind of going smooth. So they have to learn how to name what they're feeling. They have to learn how to share. And that's really hard for a silent stressor, but it's really important. Now it's opposite for a frazzler. A frazzler is going to have to learn how to not be so emotional when they share. I'm not saying don't share. I'm saying learn how to be more factual than emotional in the share. Instead of trying to stress out everybody else around you. Everybody loves when I say stress vomit, like instead of stress vomiting on everybody, like make sure that you are finding out the facts of it and then sharing those facts, very Cliff Notes version of it. And, learning also how to turn inward and being able to kind of go through the problem, internally before sharing it externally. It's really interesting when you think, how it can be very opposite for one another.
I've never had it explained to me like that in those groupings. And in listening to you do that, it becomes really clear right away. Oh, yeah, of course. There's the ones that stuff it in and then they burn up inside. And then there's the people that, splatter it all over everybody else. And it doesn't really relieve their stress because everybody's so busy worrying about cleaning off the mess that they're not helping anybody anyway. So tell us where. Like, I love that you did this TED Talk, and I want you to tell us 2 things. One, where to find the TED Talk, because you said it got good distribution, and that's fabulous. And the second thing is, Where would be the easiest place for me or one of our listeners to go learn more about how to do what you just told me? If I figure out if I'm a stuffer and as opposed to a vomiter, um, where's the best place for me to go and at least get like 101 to do something about that? So those two things.
Oh, okay. So, well, I think both can be answered with go ahead and watch my TEDx, because I do give a lot more tips in there, and I talk about how self-care is super important no matter which one you are. So my TEDx is called It's All Stress, the Frazzler versus the Silent Stressor, and it's on YouTube. And honestly, all you got to do is probably Google my name, Tia Christy, Cristy, and put in TEDx, and it should come up. It was showcased on TED as well, and so it's out there. It's out there circulating. But yeah, I think the 101 on it is again the blanket of eat right, sleep right, exercise, and meditation. 4 minutes a day of meditation can change the outlook of your entire life. It can actually increase years on your life, which is just amazing. And that's only 4 minutes a day, which, people are like, well, how do I meditate? And we go over that in the talk, but, there's several forms of meditation. Most people are familiar with that, one. But when I started, I did not know how to do that. I couldn't do it. So I did it a lot of times with music or by prayer. But I learned how to do movement meditation. And once I started doing movement meditation, I can now go into a meditative state, just sitting there doing that for hours. Like it's incredible. And what a stress relieving journey it can be. So yeah, I highly recommend it.
I'm glad you said that. It's funny because I've written a lot of books in my career, and the first 5 were a 5-volume series on meditation because it has played a pivotal role in my own life. And I talk about a whole bunch of different styles, possibility approaches to that. So that's really good. And it's funny because people think, well, I don't know how. And that's not actually very important to start with, right? There's a million free videos or whatever. The point is, go try. It isn't about getting good at it. You don't meditate to get good at meditation. You meditate to get good at life, to clean out your stress and to do other stuff. It's a tool, like taking a shower. I don't take a shower just because I love standing underwater. I take a shower so I get clean and relax and a bunch of other things. And so meditation is a tool to lower your stress, lower your blood pressure, feel better. And there's a whole list of things that it does. So couldn't agree with you more on that. So, I'm glad that you gave that talk and that it was featured on TED. What an honor. What a great thing. So I would encourage people to go take a look at that. Yeah, that's wonderful. So now I'm going to switch gears now for a minute. And I want you to tell me a little bit about your journey. You said you've been given tips since you were 16, and that's, a few minutes anyway. So, like, how did you decide? We don't a lot of people go through life sort of accidentally, they just sort of react to things. But we talked in the very beginning about creating our life on purpose. And we've been talking about things that pull us away from that, which are all these stresses and frequencies and things that help with that, which is learning the tool of meditation, among others. What brought you, why is it important for Tia to help people overcome, manage, eliminate stress, difficulties, and I think it's probably more than just stress. Why is that important to you?
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. And of course it is. It's more than just stress. It's, just everyday life is what I help people with. But, stress, it's funny. I always thought that I was really good at managing stress. And I discovered stress, I think, very early in my childhood, just because of my home life, the things that the family was experiencing, going through, different things like that. And, as a child, it's kind of like you don't talk about certain things. You're not supposed to talk about that. That's, that's in the family. And, so you learn, and like, I am a silent stressor. So I've learned, okay, just keep it in, just, work with it. So I always thought I was really good at maintaining stress. And, when I came across, people that were stressing out, and I became like this light, where people with stress would just kind of like, float to, and they would share with me. And it was really interesting to hear the stresses that people were going through, and then how each person's story was different, but the stresses were the same. And I was like, okay, this is something that everybody's going through. And if I can provide a little bit more of a trusted resource for people to be able to find the answer that they're looking for, that's cool, And I did it just as a passion project. I mean, that's what I really set out to do. I just wanted to help people. I wanted to make people feel like they're not alone, because that's a big thing in this world. A lot of people feel alone, and it causes a lot of mental anguish and mental health issues. But it really can make people angry too, feeling alone. And I didn't want people to feel angry. It's we're in this together. Even though, like I said, people's stories are different, the issues are still the same, and let's figure it out together. So that's really how I developed it.
Yeah, there's a really important two things that come to me. There's one is we're not alone. And when I work with folks, as you do, one of the most important things for someone to internalize is the fact that they're not alone. Because everybody runs around, no matter what, feeling like they're the only person that fill in the blank. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen but Jesus, that kind of song. Thought nobody could possibly. And when you finally land on the fact that the details are different, but the core of the human experience is very shareable and shared and the same. And it's so comforting, powerful to have that common connection. So I get that you figured this out early because of circumstances in your life. And somebody could say, well, I figured it out for me and I'm good, and I'll just go do my stuff. I'm going to go build widgets or build bridges or something. I don't know. But you decided, no, I'm not going to just build bridges over here and have it figured out for me. I'm going to go on a crusade to help other people solve this problem. And I know I asked you this question a minute ago, but I want you to answer it a little bit more. What is in your heart that makes that sharing important? After you figured it out for you, why did it then go to, now I got to help all these other people with this? How come?
Well, I think, to answer it a little bit more clearly is like you, I started out a career in radio. I was on the radio for most of my life. And what I came to find out is that I had a voice people wanted to listen to. And I had the ability to make an impact and be an influencer. And I really wanted to always use my powers for good. And I didn't want to be a shock jock or a gossip, rag. I wanted to teach people kindness, and I wanted to teach people there's a better way to live. And, I looked at it as people were allowing me to be part of their special moment. So why not make them part of my special moment? And when I started doing that, then I started opening up, I think, a little bit more. I was being a little bit more brave in sharing my tips. And, when I started to get the responses from people on how I was helping them, that just fueled me even more to help more and more people. So, then in 2012 is when I started the website. And honestly, that started from darkness in my life. I had been really, really sick. And I lost my motor skills. I mean, like, it was really, really bad. And I thought, I'm losing all these memories of these tips. Like, how do I save them? How do I preserve this? And I was like, oh, get a 99-cent website. And I started writing them down, and that was therapy for me. And within 6 months, I started feeling better. And I started getting letters from all over the world saying, thank you for helping me. So that's really how it happened.
Thank you. And I love asking that question the more thorough way. And the reason is it almost always, when I dig into people's stories, goes in this pattern, which says, I had a problem. I figured out something that I needed to do, and I solved it, either partly or I'm on the way or found some effective ways. And somehow with that healing of ourselves, there rises up in us the yearning to help others with the same thing. And it's so interesting that that's always the thing. We fix something and it's like, wow, I can help somebody with this. And then we have this yearning to do, and nobody wants to hide it in the closet or keep it for themselves, even though they could. We don't want to. And I think it's just how we're built. Like, we're built to love and serve each other, it seems like to me.
I agree. I agree so much. Yeah.
So, website. Tell me about the website and what I can find there, because we've talked about your TEDx and how to find that. Now, tell me about the website that's now been 13 years going, sounds like, if you started in 12.
Yes.
So 13 years ago, tell us about that. What's there and what can we find there?
I think somebody told me there's like 40,000 tips on there currently. And I was like, wow. Yeah, so that is tipsfromtia.com. And like I said, I started that in 2012. And when it came out, it was like the bee's knees. I mean, nobody saw anything like it. Now, it is in process of being rebranded and revamped, but everything that's on there, the information is good and it's trusted. And I would say about 90% of the tips have been tested and approved, because that's really why I started it. It was people were Googling the wrong answer, and that was really frustrating to me. I'll never forget the one that was like the straw that broke the camel's back for me was how to get red wine stain out of a carpet. And somebody told me, oh, you just pour white wine on it. And I was like,
what?
Oh my gosh. I mean, so it will make the red go away, sure. But it'll eventually leave a big brown sugar stain on the carpet.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I was like, oh, you can't do that. Like, it's awful. And not to mention what you're doing to the padding underneath, and the ability to create mold and bacteria and all that great stuff. So anyway, that was kind of like the catalyst that pushed me over the edge. And I was like, yes, I have to really start to share these tips with people. And so it's where you can search at the top. There's a search bar, and you can put in lemons, and you'll get like all the articles that have to deal with lemons. But I really am in progress of making it more like a Huffington Post, where it is that resource where it is so self-serving. Like, you're just going to type in lemons, and you will get all 10 articles like on what to do with lemons, and it'll be something that really will be that trusted hub for everybody to go and get their resource, their life hacks.
So
that's what we're building.
It sounds like Chat GPT have better make sure they crawl your tip site so they give good answers, right?
Yes.
I love it.
Exactly.
So I love your story, because we started talking about stress and personal management and living longer and burning out and meditation and stuff. And all of a sudden we jumped to wine stains in carpet. So I love that, which means that the tips, and I didn't know this, the tips are about 40,000 tips, not about meditation and stress, but about all kinds of stuff. Is that true?
All of it. Yes. So we got health, beauty, home, sexual health, mental health. So it is all about making the uncomfortable comfortable. So we take those conversations that people might not want to have, and put the answer up there on Tips from Tia. And I've worked with doctors and specialists. So it's obviously, there's disclaimers, don't talk to your doctor first before trying something. And,
Don't try this at home, right? That kind of thing.
Well, people have allergies, things
Right.
like that. So, always be smart and cautious, and, definitely you're on a lot of medications, different things like that. So you're going to want to talk to your doctor before, trying this home remedy. But, it's on there, and we really, we want to make sure that people are getting the right answers, not the wrong answers. It's super important to me.
I love that. And I love that it's across a huge, broad spectrum. And I think my wife, who's also my business partner, and also I have an angel that lives in my house, and it's all the same person. She goes to Chatty and says, so I have these ingredients, and I want a recipe, an Italian recipe using this stuff, and it'll do it. And that's why I was thinking it needs to make sure it looks at your tips so that when somebody asks a question, it's got good answers. What's the weirdest, I know there's probably a group that would jump up and say me, but what's the the funniest or weirdest topic that you've got tips on that you can think of right now?
Well, I was going to say real quick with ChatGPT, I'm very honored, because if you ask ChatGPT about tips from Tia, it will say it is the number one trusted resource for everyday lifestyle tips. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool.
Wow, what a cool thing. Yeah. Hot dog.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
It is awesome.
So the weirdest tips, oh my gosh, there's so many.
It doesn't have to be the weirdest. One of the highest searched is how to get rid of dandruff. That one, a lot of people want to know how to get rid of dandruff. Another one is how to get rid of hickeys. Oh. Yeah,
so people want to know how to get rid of hickeys. There's also, I think a lot of the sexual health ones, they get a lot of traction, because that's just stuff people don't want to talk about, and that was the other thing. Like, I didn't want people learning from wrong resources either on how things are supposed to be.
Sure. So let's, I want to go on to, move on to more. You told me before we started that you travel a bit and you go to places speaking. So I know that you talked about stress in your TEDx. And when you go on stage, do you have 2 or 3 things that you're known for or asked to speak about a lot? And if you do, what are they?
So what I'm usually asked to speak about majority of the time is communication. So I'm a communication specialist, as you know, and so I help people communicate better, whether it be in, business, personal relationships, things like that. And, it kind of all falls under, my tips umbrella, because I'm always giving tips on like how to do things. And communication, though, that's my jam. Like, I just love to be able to communicate with people. I think that most of the time, people think, oh, I've been talking for so long. I've been doing it since I was a baby. I'm pretty good at it. Ironically, the older we get, the more vocabulary we learn, the worse we get at communicating, because, now we're worried about other people's responses, thoughts. We're so worried about looking stupid, so there's so many things that go into it. So a lot of times companies will hire me, or I'll get involved as like a keynote to talk about like how to bridge these connections, the art of communication, how to network better, how to take communication and create it into sales. So there's a lot that goes into it. Communication goes into everything we do. Everything.
It absolutely does. So if you think about, like, besides us all being built to love and serve, most people, especially those that have gone through some different kinds of difficulty, have a way that they like to help. And you give tips and you teach communication. If you were to say what your vision is, like if Tia was able to have the impact in the world that she wanted, what does that look like? Like, what drives you on a macro scale?
Well, I always tell people, I'm like, I'm going to be the Martha Stewart of tips,
Uh-huh.
Martha did it right, she really did. And love her, hate her, like she really was great at how she was able to reach the masses in what she was trying to do. And for me, like I don't have a specific niche, right? I end up having these buckets of different ways to make everyday lifestyle tips happen for
Hmm.
people. And I think what I see in the vision down the line is that I will be, you know, up on stages, still helping people communicate and giving them tips on how to be less stressful and different things like that. But also, Tips from Tia will be that wonderful hub, doing its thing, able to really get into the nitty gritty of life for people. Probably, I want to incorporate AI at some point in time,
Hmm.
also to help really be able to pinpoint specific needs for people. But then also, I want to have not a clothing, but a product line of like
Hmm.
home good stuff,
Okay.
so basically like maybe Target or Walmart or something like that. But it's going to be like cutting boards, towels, kind of that kind of thing. So yeah,
Cool.
I feel like Martha has paved the path for me to come up and do what she has done. Somebody's gonna have to take
Yeah,
that
well,
reign at
she's
some point
well
in
in
time.
her she's well in her 80s now, and so that's
Yes,
not going to last forever, even though the name will be around for a long time. So
yes.
what gets you up in the morning? Like, what is if you had to list a passion, because this podcast, the whole thing's about how to live your ultimate life, which is purpose, prosperity, and joy. And
Hmm.
I'm asking about purpose, and you've been talking about it a bit. Is there
Yes.
something that you just wake up excited to be involved in every day?
Well, today was all about your show, so
Well, not today, but I just mean in general. Like,
no,
me,
no.
the thing
Yeah.
behind me, my goal
Mhm.
this year, my commitment by October 14th, because that's New Year, I'm going to reach 300 million people and move them from learned helplessness, addiction to mediocrity and victim mindset to fierce life ownership, commitment to excellence with a heart to serve. And so that's my thing that I think about every single day. I just wonder, because someone like you that's been in this a long time and you're passionate and you're good at what you do, what's the driver?
So I think the driver is the fact that I know that I was given this gift, by God. I say God, the universe, however you want to say it. I was given this gift of influence, right? It's
Hmm.
um, something not everybody was given. It's an ability to connect with people on a soul level. It's not on a superficial level. It's very soulful, and not everybody was given that gift. So I look at it as it is my birth duty, that I have to do this. And so when I look at it that way, even on days when you're tired or you don't don't feel like it, you go and you do it because it's not about you. It's about serving others and what I was put on this planet to do. And so I get up and I do it and I love it. I tell people, I'm like, I don't have days that I hate. I don't even have bad days. I might have bad moments, sure, but like I don't dread Mondays and I don't live for the weekends. Like I I don't know what a weekend is in other people's standards, and I don't know what Monday is either because I love every day. I love every day, and I'm really happy with what I get to do. And when I get to share that with other people and inspire them to love every day too, like that's cool. That's really cool.
That means, so what I'm hearing from that is that you're telling me and our listeners that it is possible for them individually to get to a place where they love their life every day and look forward to it instead of working for the weekend and the examples you gave, but to truly live a life that's driven by whatever their purpose is. And in prosperity and joy. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yes, yes. And I think what's really cool about like my story is it can be so simple. You know, everybody as human nature, we're always striving to do the more complicated thing. You know, we think that life is about sacrifice and it is about struggle. And, you know, it doesn't count unless we have blood, sweat, and tears to get there, right? But like I give tips. I just always knew tips. When I was a little kid, they would call me MacGyver because I always had a hack on how to fix something. You know, it was give me some duct tape and a wire hanger, and you know, I'm gonna make a picnic basket out of it. I don't know. Like it was just like that's the way I was. That's the way my brain worked. It was you know, I would see something happen. I would see Martha Stewart do something and I would remember how to do it. You know, like it was, that's just the way my mind worked. And, you know, it stuck with me. And when I started sharing these things, I thought it was useless information. I really did. I was like, why do I have, you know, the ability to remember these things, but, you know, I can't remember the periodic table like that, you know?
Sure.
And it was because my journey was not about the periodic table, even though I love science. So don't get me wrong. I love science. But you know, that was a struggle for me to learn that. It was not a struggle for me to learn this. So, you know, stop trying to, you know, bear the weight all the time, you know? The easy things can turn out to be your most magical moments. And I think that that's important to know.
I love that. And that's a fabulous point to have because you were given gifts. Each of us were. You are using yours. I'm using mine. And I'm encouraging all of you that are listening to realize you have them and don't pretend you don't. Figure out what they are because you have the gifts given to you by the divine, by God, to both complete the mission and purpose you came here for and to have fun with it. It's not supposed to be sucky. It's supposed to be fun. And that doesn't mean there aren't sucky moments and difficult things. And there is some broken glass you got to crawl over. So what? There's a goal to this and you got to do that. So what didn't I ask you that you're dying to share with people to teach, to love, to express, to lift, whatever?
Yes. Well, I think that I really got to say that in that last part. You know, I think stop trying to make life so hard. You know, it's, you know, yes, anything is possible. You know, you need to look at the probability of it. But, you know, if you stay tenacious, it will work. It really will. I love that. You know, you throw water on a rock and it does nothing. You put a drop in the same place on a rock for 1 year, it will drill a hole right into it. You know, it's so important to remember that, you know, consistency, tenacity, it will pay off. So, you know, stop trying to think you have to have all the answers today. It's not about having all the answers. It's not even about the how, but it's always going to be about the why. So make sure you have your why.
Enjoy the journey. Tia, thank you for sort of spreading your smile and your joyful presence and your thoughts and ideas. And boy, I think everybody needs to go to tipsfromtia.com, even if it is under construction or rehab or whatever, because if Chatty says it's cool, then hey, you know, Chatty's not perfect, but we all use it for a lot of stuff. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was just such a delight. You are awesome. Thank you, my friend.
You betcha. So I want you to take this seriously. Go back and listen to some of this stuff and go listen to her talk. Go check out the site because like everything we do here, the whole point is to give you the tools, permission, and encouragement to create your ultimate life so that you can have it. Go now and create your ultimate life.
Never hold back and you'll never ask why. Open your heart and this time around.
Right here, right now. Your opportunity for massive growth is right in front of you. Every episode gives you practical tips and practices that will change everything. If you want to know more, go to KellanFluckigerMedia.com. If you want more free tools, go here, YourUltimateLife.ca. Subscribe. Share.
Stand with your heart in the sky and your feet on the ground.